Public comments. Ms. Hayes has a few of the directors. I think I want to do a couple announcements for us.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, council members. First of all, I'd like to ask Chief Greiner to step up and give us an update on the hurricane and the preparations the city is currently making as the incident commander. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. The update from 5 p.m., so just an hour ago, is relatively unchanged from the 8 a.m. So in between, there was a thought the storm might have shifted a little to the east. It seems to be back on the track it was at 8 a.m. It is a huge storm. It's 400 miles across. It has 175 mile an hour sustained winds. With it being that large, when the leading edge gets to us, it will take a long time before the trailing edge passes over us. It is a really large, strong storm. It looks like it's coming right up the Florida coast. So it will be a long weekend for us. So in preparation for that, we've been holding meetings here in Mount Dora so that we are prepared. Our department heads have been meeting with our different people. We have a plan to take care of Mount Dora while the storm comes through. The Lake County Emergency Operations Center will open tomorrow. We will have a Mount Dora representative there for the duration of the storm. The Mount Dora EOC here in Mount Dora will open Saturday. Exactly when is a bit of a moving target. We will open it before the tropical storm winds reach Mount Dora, but we're not exactly certain when that will be yet. So as we get closer, probably late tomorrow, we'll pick a time of day and it will start then. That is where city government will operate out of, at our public safety building, and that's our plan for that. So, any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Mayor, the city facilities will close Friday at noon. We will be closed on Monday at this point. Obviously, we'll assess any damage that we have to go and look at, and we'll determine other facilities opening after Monday at that point in time. I would remind the citizens to use the website. We have a Facebook page as well as a Twitter account. If you're Facebook or Twitter, please look at the look at the city of Mount Dora. We will be continually updating you from that perspective. We'll also update the website. There are phone numbers on our website in which you can call in if you prefer to use the phone. We have posted on our website as well as, again, Facebook and Twitter. We posted all the locations for sandbag pickup as well as any other information pertinent to the go ahead and come up, Mr. Greiner, as well as anything else pertinent to the storm, and making sure that we keep you safe and informed as best we can.
In regards to sandbags, there are several locations in the county that have sand but no bags. So the bags are not there. An alternative to that, if you want sandbags at your house, if you have a heavy-duty lawn trash bag, you can still put 25 pounds of sand in that and use that just like the sandbags. So those locations that have sand, you'll need to bring your own bags. I don't want anybody to show up unprepared for that.
Right. We did that yesterday, so I understand that feeling. We showed up and waited at Sorrento for about an hour, and we finally said, okay, we're not going to wait any longer. So anyway, just a couple other quick announcements in reference to the storm. Magical Meat, they're here this evening. They just really, they have opened their doors to the city employees to offer them coffee, soup, sandwiches, anything they have available to our employees who are working throughout the process when they can be out and about. I would just like to note for citizens, just for your understanding, your information, our vehicles do not move once the winds hit 40 miles per hour. It's dangerous for them to be out on the road. They just become, I believe Mr. Greiner stated, they become a billboard that's just simply tipped over if it's a fire truck, even our electrical company. So at 40 miles per hour, we are waiting until the storm processes through. Then we will open back up and respond. So If you're at that point and you are close to you feel like you need assistance, don't wait until we hit the 40, then we cannot reach you. So it's important that if you need help, reach out for help as soon as you can. We will get out there and take care of business as soon as we can. Again, the winds have to reside back to 40, less than 40, so that we can go out safely and start cleaning up debris and not other things. So I just want to mention that. I would like Mr. Rebels to come up and talk about the electric, and that way he can give an update for those of you who are part of the city electric grid.
Hi, Charles Rebel, Electric Utility Manager. This actually applies to everybody, whether you're served by Mount Dora or Duke or Seco. It's pretty much the same story. At the state level, Governor Scott is holding conference calls every night with all the utility managers in the state. One thing he's done since they had the hurricane in Tallahassee last year is he's forced the big utilities, investor-owned utilities like Duke and Florida Power and Light, to be willing to provide mutual aid to cities and co-ops and vice versa. So for the first time, and this is a good story, all the utilities in the state of Florida are on the same page, and the governor is holding everybody accountable. All right, so that's good news. To give you an idea of what the big utilities are doing, Florida Power and Light and Duke Energy probably has 20,000 people mustered at the state line waiting to come in. The problem is the hurricane is going toward the state line. So what that means is it's going to be slower restoration than normal because nobody can get into the hurricane as past the state line. As far as electrical outlook, the last time we had winds like this in Lake County was when Hurricane Donna came through in the early 60s. We had 75, 80 mile an hour sustained winds. This may be worse, we don't know, but this is a very serious hurricane. The other problem with it is it's very slow moving. It's like Francis in 2004. It's only moving like 12 or 13 miles an hour, so we may have hurricane force winds for a long time. What does that mean? We're probably going to have lots of power outages in Florida, not just Mount Dora, but all over the state, mainly because of trees and other damage. So the Mount Dora system, I think, is in better shape to weather this than most. We have concrete poles. In a lot of places, we have lots of concrete poles. We also have a very aggressive tree trimming program, which causes me a lot of heartburn, but now it's going to be worth it because we'll have fewer trees causing problems. And the other thing we have here is the ability to backfeed circuits. So if a circuit gets destroyed or knocked down from one direction, in some cases we can backfeed and get customers up. And the last thing is, and this is true to everybody, Outdoor, Duke, Seco, when the power finally goes out, nothing's going to happen until the storm is over. You'll probably see a lot of blinking lights, that's tree limbs hitting power lines, and that'll go on until protection equipment decides that it's time to lock the circuit out. So once the circuit goes out, it's probably not coming back. All right. In Mount Dora, the first thing we'll have to do is clear the streets. We can't do a damage assessment until we can get out and see where the damage is. So probably the first day or so, we'll be clearing the streets so we can get to the system and look at the damage. We have our crew here. We also have a mutual aid agreement. We're going to be hopefully signing one with Duke Energy soon, so that Duke Energy employees can come help. But we have a big network of municipal electric utilities that can come help us. The bigger ones like OUC, Kissimmee, and so forth. We already got a staging area set up for them at the Golden Triangle Shopping Center. So I think we're as prepared as we can be. On the current path, it's going to be a big event. It's not just Mount Dora, it's the whole state of Florida. It's going to be a big event. So.
But also mention that, as Charles mentioned and even Tim earlier, we open our EOC on Saturday. The storm is expected, we're expected to see those winds on Saturday at some point in time, late afternoon hopefully, maybe earlier than that. Those winds will be in existence until sometime Monday. We bring crews on in standby mode and as active participants right from the beginning, because for them to be able to get into the city after the storm has gone through could be next to impossible. So with that being said, it will be very similar to Matthew last year, in which we will go out as soon as we're able to and start cleaning up the city. And I think most of the citizens know we cleaned up very quickly. We have a very responsive team. Our crews are just wonderful at what they do. They take care of the roads and they take care of things. I will say, just as a point of notice, that comes at a cost in the sense that we're paying for those employees to be here to be able to get out to the community and take care of the community. A lot of that is reimbursement by FEMA, some of it's not. Last year's event, about $40,000 and some dollars were not reimbursement. Make sure I had the right number. 45 and some change. So I just say that, just again, transparency, very important to us, so that we let you know that we will have some funding that will not be reimbursement, but we feel it's important to mention that we have all those employees there able to respond. Last year we put 4 people in the downtown to get it up and running so the businesses can become prosperous again. We do the same thing for the other roads. We look at the arterial roads first and take care of those. So we always look at the after action report and we adjust it accordingly, and we've done that, and staff has to respond to that tomorrow. We have one final staff meeting tomorrow at 10 o'clock in order to go over the data, and if we adjust any of our personnel, we'll do that at that point in time. But I just wanted to mention that. You also see in your packet tonight, we will present to you an amended agenda with some amended resolutions that we feel like are important to put into play in lieu of debris pickup, debris monitoring, curfews, procurement policy, and then the declaration of emergency. So those things we'll go through, and I do apologize that we were not able to get those to you earlier. They're fairly standard, as you know, and we've used standard processes from other cities and so forth, so I would be glad to answer those questions. We do have copies at our Deputy City Clerk's desk for anybody in the public who would like to have those and look at those. I believe that's it, Mayor, at this point in time. Lisa, did I miss anything on PIO? Chief, anything? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, can we have, Ms. Johnson, can I have roll call, please?
Yes. Mayor Jerome?
Here.
Ms. Tillett?
Here.
Mr. Crail? Ms. Hope?
Here.
Mr. Rolfson?
Here.
Mr. Slavy?
Here.
Mr. Tucker?
I'm here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It's time for the public comments, and this is the time when the public come forward with any comments on any subject that is not on our agenda tonight. And please you have speaker cards, and you're given 3 minutes. State your name, address, and a lot of questions that are asked, and the questions that are usually asked at this time are put on our website under an area of frequently asked questions, and those answers are placed there at that time within 30 days. So with that, I have Denny Wood, please.
Denny Wood, 2009 Isola Boulevard, Mount Dora. I'm here tonight to thank the council, and you've each got one of our shirts. On a little happier note, we're happy we had the Mount Dora Friends 4-mile run last Monday instead of this coming Monday. It was very successful. We had over 200 participants, which is about 2.5 times what we had last year. We raised over $10,000 in sponsorships, besides the event fees. The police were wonderful, the volunteers were wonderful. We had Mr. Tucker run, we had the mayor welcome everybody. Lori was one of 30 volunteers we had, so we had a lot of participation from the city, and we really thank all the support we got from the community. We have painted the building. Our next project is the lawn, and we'll get that all shaped up, and then we got a parking lot issue that we've got to do there eventually. But we do have other funds coming in, but I want to thank the city, and I just wanted to give you the shirts, and hope you wear them with pride, even in the hurricane. Thank you.
Thank you, Denny. Thanks for the work that you do to help out the Dining House. Appreciate it. Okay, next is Jim Yasik.
Jim Yatsik, 206 East 9th Avenue, Mount Dora. And this is a compliment. Of course, I've been through several of the hurricanes, and the Public Works Department has always shown It's amazing what they can do and what they have done. So we're very, very fortunate to have very, very good staff. We had an incident at our house where we had some backup on the street and from the wastewater. And they came out and the big truck came, did stuff, and well, a month later, same thing happened. And so Jason York, who's, I guess, I don't know what his title is, but he brought his crew out, and he'd come up with a report. He says, there's something wrong here. There's something wrong here. And they dug down, I mean, deep, deep, found a Tico gas line had gone through the pipe, the old clay pipe, and that's why roots were getting in there. And so now they know when other things happen. So I just want to compliment Jason York for that. The other thing I want to compliment the mayor, and now all council that went to the, I guess what we call the Wolf Branch Innovation District, as far as giving respect to the former councils who worked on that project. I mean, we worked on that a long time, giving direction because we knew that we needed a better economic base for the city than just homes. So that's where that germ of that came from. But also, who should be recognized as staff, because without the negotiation and the genius put into that agreement, and that was our former planning director, Mark Reigington, had a lot to do with that. He worked with council, council gave direction, and that's why you have such a nice plan to work with. It was a two-pronged thing, and thank you for showing so much interest. And that was a really great article that came out on that. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim.
And Rosanna Bob.
Rosanna Botto, 541 East First Avenue in Mount Dora. Before I say what I wanted to say about the patrons of the community building, I want to say thank you, Ms. Hayes, and all of the staff council for the preparation, because it makes me as a citizen feel a lot better to know that you all are on top of this. And this is a city of volunteers, as you know, and if you all need help, ask us. I'm sure you can round up some folks like you do for everything else. So anyway, stay safe, everybody. When we're finished with cleaning up the trees that have fallen in our yards and everything else, then we would like for you all to come to, on Saturday, September 30th, CC Tennille, who has performed at the Modernism Museum twice and is a fabulous entertainer. And the Patrons Community Building are having her come to the community building and bring her full band. She really, really is good. I heard her both times when she was at the Modernism Museum, and several of my friends have. So it's called CC Tennille and Soul Commotion. And it's going to be great. The tickets are only $15 and $25. Again, Saturday, September 30th. We would appreciate it if you all would come buy tickets, because it's a fundraiser for those of us who are trying to raise money to improve the situation in the community building. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have another one here from Mr. Gonzalez, but you want to know about some questions on the trim notice, and we will be addressing that in our agenda. There's an item that's on our agenda under our millage rates and under our budget process. No, because we're.
That's just a question.
We don't. Okay, again, the questions you can. Is it pertaining to an item on the agenda? If it's on the agenda, we address it at the agenda item when we get to the agenda item. You have an opportunity as the public to come up and ask questions at that point before we make any decisions. The public is called to respond to anything that we do at that point. That's why we do what we're doing here at this point.
14 questions that were asked about the trim notice are going to be answered.
Anyway, at that point, you can ask questions at that point, okay? Or be part of the discussion at that point. And you okay? Okay, that's all the cards I have. Anybody else from the public wish to address the council on any item not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none. And I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So move as amended.
Okay, as amended. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's done. Okay, approval of minutes of the city council work session minutes dated August 15, 2017. Can I have a motion for approval?
Move to approve.
Second.
I have one correction to those, and Ms. Johns, this is not a typo or a, clerical error. It is a Lori Tillett error. Back and it's just wanted the record corrected that the community trust distribution meeting will be on the 20th, not the 10th. I don't know where I pulled that out from, but the last page, page 17 of the old agenda there.
On the 20th.
So, just for clarity, thank you.
Okay. Okay, got a motion then to approve with the change. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, approval of city council minutes dated August 31st, 2017. Have a motion for approval for those.
Mayor, may I just say, I believe we received a few comments from Councilmember Slavy for the 31st, and we have those, and we can read those to you. I think Ms. Johns has those. Did you bring this with
Or
you?
they might have been the 15th, I'm not sure.
Okay, they were wording, so we can bring those back to you if you like, but it was just a few word smithing, so to speak, but we can bring those back to you at the next date if that's okay with you. I don't remember if it's the 15th or 31st, I apologize.
And also the change that Ms. Tillett just asked for is on these minutes, not the first set approved.
It was on the it was on the 15th.
On the 15th. We already did that one already.
Which
We already did
just
that.
Okay, because, well, maybe they're in my packet backwards then.
Okay, so
Yeah, and it's
31st.
at the end,
Yeah, I found it.
31st, we're gonna pull them for now. Is that what we're saying?
Let's pull the 31st if you don't mind, Council, and then we'll present that back to
Not a
you.
problem. We'll table that to next meeting, not a problem.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, approval, we got approval of resolution number 2017-126, establishing the millage rate. We doing, we're fine to go? Okay. Establishing the millage rate for fiscal year 2017, 2018. And Ms. Cockcroft, would you read the title, please?
I'm actually going to defer to the finance director because he'd like for me to read it in a specific order within the presentation, then I'll be reading it. If that's okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. As the city attorney stated, I want to read it in accordance with trim requirements.
Okay.
Tonight's council shall set the tentative millage rate and adopt the tentative fiscal year 2017-2018 budget as noticed in the proposed property taxes trim truth and millage notice that the Lake County property appraiser sent to all property owners in compliance with Florida statute 200.065 section 2 setting the maximum millage. The taxing authority must publicly announce the Mount Dora operating tax levies and the fiscal year 2017-2018 budget. The first item this evening that we will be covering for your motion is the Mount Dora operating millage. The city of Mount Dora is the taxing authority. Current year taxable value for operating purposes is $1,007,521,506. 5.7713 is the rollback rate. The staff recommended millage represents a 12.63 increase over the rollback rate, and 6.50 is the staff recommended millage rate. This increase covers the increased cost of operations and maintenance of the general fund and the requested capital improvement projects. City Attorney, would you please read the resolution into the record?
The entire resolution.
Just the title.
Resolution number 2017-126, a resolution of City of Mount Dora determining the amount of the millage to be established and imposed in accordance with the provisions of the state law and fixing the rate of ad valorem taxation for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2017 and ending September 30th, 2018, providing for legislative findings and intent, providing for authority to the city manager for implementing administrative actions, and providing for scrivener's conflicts, severability, and effective date.
So, Mayor, Council, to be in compliance with the trim and Florida statutes, this even requested would need to be in the wording as established in front of you. Something simply, motion to approve resolution 2017 R-126, tentative Mount Dora operating millage, and the millage rate at which y'all decide for us to go forward to the final hearing.
Okay. And can I have a motion for approval as stated by?
You can't state it as stated, it must be individual.
I'll move it.
But
Yes, because of the trim requirements, this particular motion as it regards to tentative millage and tentative budget must be read by a member of council to be official.
Oh. Mayor, I move approval of resolution 2017-R-126, tentative Mount Dora operating millage at $6.50.
Yes, sir.
Okay, have a second.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, start off discussion?
Yes, sir.
We're gonna bring right over to Ms. Hayes then at this point.
Well, I think at this time, Mayor, we have the presentation, and we'll be glad to finish going through that presentation if you would like for us to, or if that's, council wishes to have their discussion ahead of time, or that public record, public comment, I will leave it up to you, but we can go through the presentation as we have it, if that's what you desire at this point.
Council have any, you want to discuss, have the presentation?
Yeah, what is different than what we've already heard? Other than, I mean, right now, at where I'm sitting, I can't support a 6.5% and the adjustments it requires. But the other thing that really bothers me is that whole thing is built on us passing several rate increases also tonight, which is a continued increase to them. And as I've, for lack of a better word, reflected on this whole process, obviously, having been mayor, I've been involved in it before and understood it pretty well, and we've spent a lot of time with the presentations, but I just didn't feel we had a lot of discussion and interaction of the pros and cons of some of those things. It was kind of almost just a given as we moved along, and I felt like I was on a conveyor belt just moving along, absorbing information, but at the same time, I actually, thank you, Mr. McMasterson. I think he's back in the back, because I read through his email that he sent to all of us, I believe, and as I was reading through it, although I didn't necessarily agree with everything, it stimulated what I realized was missing, in that I didn't think, debated why to do some of the things, because in my past, in working with a very large budget like we're working, there were nice to haves and there were need to haves, and I just feel there's a number of nice to haves in there at a time to where we have need to haves we have to do, and it's going to cost more money, and it's going to hit our citizens so hard with the increase for the millage, and then these other rates, which are all understandable, but how much can they absorb in one time? And that's also reflecting on all the education we got from everyone about what's coming down the pike. But it just seemed 12.5% just seems so much for this year from where I'm sitting. That's just my thoughts on where I'm at this point. So I guess I say to you, convince me differently.
Thank you, Mayor. So I would tend to agree with most everything, or maybe everything you said there. And from a practical matter, I think it's difficult for us to prioritize for our city manager this is the most need to have, second most, and then these on the wish list. So I think from a practical matter, if this was something that we'd want to work together on, it would be that we set a number, understanding the impact of that number from a reduction in funds available for use from the organization, whatever that number is, and then turn it back to the city manager to say, you know what, you're going to have to help us prioritize that and figure out which ones they are. Otherwise, we'll be here all night going back to, well, what about that paper
Well, and I don't believe
envelope
we need to
folding?
get into that. I believe you're exactly right. We need to request the city manager to go back and we're gonna have to go up, I understand that. I could live with 6.25, maybe 6.3, because I remember you at one point was telling us that.
That was just sort of a.
So I was there,
a range.
and that, if I'm looking at it right, Mr. Kenny, is 240,000 rounded of what would need to be additional.
Yes, ma'am.
And that would be the number to go back and try to find. And then perhaps some of the things like, yes, I absolutely agree, it would be great for the residents to have a survey, but at $15,000 next year for a survey to see what they like and don't like, I don't know that that's the year. So there's one item that I personally just kind of react to. But I didn't spend a lot of time doing that because that's not what I believe our job is. I agree with you, Mr. Slavy. It should go back, but I just struggle with the 6.5.
Yeah, I happen to agree. I'm struggling with the 6.5 as well, and I think there are some necessities, and there are necessities that we need this upcoming year. There are necessities that we need to plan for in the future, so we don't want to be short-sighted in planning what we're going to need in some of the out years. And just as an example, we had a significantly large chunk of money in there for trees. Now, can that be spread over a 2 or 3 year period? Is that ideal? Probably not, but we've waited this long, so things like that could be phased in. I'm really holding hard and fast to our public safety needs. Whatever we do, we need to make sure that our priorities are in concert with our strategic plan and what we said that our citizens have told us that are their top priorities. And I'm talking on a grand, on a large scale, on a macro scale, not on a micro scale. So as well, I understand that it's going to have to go up a little bit. I also understand that the county taxes are probably coming down from prior years. And I also understand that we have to plan for this Damocles sword that we're going to get, we're going to take a chunk when the new homestead exemption passes, which I happen to agree with you, Mr. McKinney, it will pass for sure. So, and that is going to affect us as well. Where I would prefer to not have to change the millage rate again next year, I think this is sort of a critical time. I believe that it's more easily justified if we start slow, and if it turns out that we have better numbers and we know we're going to get slammed with that tax exemption, that is more easily justified to people. I think they will understand that. So I too am not going to support the. Just come back to us if we need to have another budget work session. I'm here. I'm ready to come in and talk about it, roll my sleeves up, or do whatever needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Let me start with a question. Maybe it's rhetorical. This is a tentative decision we're making. No. Okay, either way.
This is your first hearing. So what we said tonight is
Very
what we
good.
published in the newspaper, and then we go from there.
And so it certainly can be changed.
It could be changed on the 19th, yes,
So
sir.
in that sense, it's tentative, at least in my view. I'd like to have you all recall the buzzsaw this council and our citizens got in when we failed to have a rate study for 10 years. So what happened as a result of that? The water rates had to go up in order to avoid bankrupting the system by 11% one year and 11% this year, and then it'll go back to 2 plus whatever percent that is for the next whatever years. And that's because we postponed the inevitable and got ourselves in that quandary, and the citizens in that quandary, because all of a sudden we were in a crisis and we had to do it, or we didn't have appropriate water rate. We had a dangerous issue from a water service standpoint. And that's what concerns me now. And let me give you one example. We are and have been for years under a court order to improve our public access points. Sidewalks, for example, is a classic example. We typically have spent $50,000 per year, as I recall, in trying to satisfy that requirement of the federal government that we had to do that. This, and I, among others on this council, have been urging that we need to do that faster because we get sued, to be blunt about it. Little old men like me trip and fall, bring a claim against the city writes a check. I know we've got insurance, but deductibles and all of that apply. And we place ourselves in a legally dangerous position to just kind of a don't give a darn attitude, let the insurance cover it. And I'm really concerned about that. So this year, in this budget that is now proposed to be at 6.5 millage rate, we have enough money, 300,000, I think, to speed that process up. Every single sidewalk in this city, not just the Country Club of Mount Dora, but every single city sidewalk is a focus point of jeopardizing our legal circumstances, and it may be an issue where if we aren't seen as stepping up to the plate and spending the money which we should have spent years ago, a la the water rate study is an example of deferring action that we shouldn't defer, we may wind up be facing another federal litigation issue because we are lethargic in that. This is an aging city, our infrastructure is aging, and we all agree. We've got Wekiva and all those other things facing us that are important. Mr. Former Mayor Yatsik has made that crystal clear that it's been a policy of this council for, since 11 years, to expand our economic base for the benefit of all taxpayers and all homeowners and all real estate, and to improve that tax base. So to now do that again, I'm not in favor of, and I intend to support the resolution for that reason and many other reasons, but those are just examples. The final example is, this is, and I'm not throwing any roses anybody's way, but this is our city manager's first budget to us. And I'm going to trust her judgment that this is what is best for this city, its taxpayers and all that. I'm not blind to know that I can certainly vote no, and I can certainly move to take out $15,000 for a study. I don't have a problem with that. But I still think it is a valuable and necessary and even an urgent issue that we cannot kick that can, as the old cliche goes down the road, any longer. We have to prepare for this aging city and its infrastructure. And I think this will do it. So I support the resolution for those reasons.
Yes, I also support the resolution for many of the same reasons. I would hate to go back to the city, or city residents, next year and say, well, we only raised it to 6.3 and we came up short, so next, I'd rather have it at 6.5 now. Trust the city manager to be wise with the spending. And then next year, if we can roll it back on next year's budget, do it that way. But I agree with Councilman Ralston. Historically, the city has kicked the can down the road on many issues, and this is why we're behind the 8 ball now. We have to address some of the issues, everything from a shortness of employees at the police department to the sidewalks, as Mr. Ralston, there are many other issues. And I agree with Councilwoman Tillett, excuse me, that if the trees can be put off, do it in sections, fine. If other things can be done in sections, I also read Mr. Masterson's letter, and I agreed with a number of things with it. But it doesn't, we can spend that money over the entire period instead of just throwing it out there. It's great, and if there's something that we don't need, it may be the disc golf or something. I'm not even sure if that's in the budget. But if the disc golf has to be put off a little bit, we can put that off a little bit. But I really think 6.5 is the way we have to go. And I hate taxes, believe me, I hate this my tax bills are exorbitant. But yes, but thank you.
I think we need to keep in mind that we need to, when we're finding examples, we need to, millage rate only affects the general fund, not the wastewater or the water or anything like that. So, and our sidewalks and taking care of our stuff is indeed follows our strategic plan, but we need to, I would like one more crack at this. I believe I have asked that, like, show me a list of items that can be deferred, or not even deferred, but started this year, finished the next or the following, spread it out a little bit. A lot of times, little cuts in many lines makes a big difference, It's like many hands make light work, only this is the other way around. Taking a little bit out of here, a little bit out of here. I understand that the new hires have already been phased in over the fiscal year, so that's not somewhere where cuts are available. I support, as I said before, and I'll say it again, I support the increase in our public safety, but I do think that there are maybe enough. These would be really nice to haves that we can defer another year. It's not like we're deferring anything that would require safety. As an example, that sidewalk program, I heartily agree. But the sidewalk, that's where you prioritize. That's where the city manager prioritizes. And I would still like to see what the impact is. I have one other thought, and that is, it seems that we always have a fund balance at the end of the year. We don't know exactly what our fund balance is going to be this year. Irma may take a huge chunk out of it, in which case, we may need to do less, even if we pass a budget, even if things are in the budget. We may not be able to afford to do them during the year. But come back to us with a 6.25, 6.3 to see what it looks like. I know we can take money out of fund balance and we have more coming in, but
I would rather see us not take money out of fund balance.
But we have, the 6.5 already does it.
Well, it does, but I mean, beyond that, I guess, let me restate it. I don't want to see the additional 239 amount come out of fund balance. That's not what I would like to see. And the total budget is?
63 million.
It's $63,459,737.
18 million in general funds.
Okay, so 18 million in general funds. 239,000 is a small percentage of that. We ought to be able to go back and find that to get us in the ballpark of 6.25 or 6. And I agree, it's not being short-sighted, because we have been at rollback at 5.997 for several years. Okay, so this is a huge step. So I'm supporting moving forward some. I just think this is way too much with the follow-up increase in the other funds that we've got to do. What it's going to do to a lot of our seniors, especially those who are on fixed income, that's a big chunk to make an adjustment for overnight. And to me, the difference is when we do the millage, it's not something our residents control once we make that decision. When it comes to the use of electricity, water, wastewater, we have some control if we choose to make the decisions. And we used to have programs that reminded people and educated people about water conservation and things, and actually were quite good in the education component. And all that went away when the budget got tight. But I can control that. I can take a 5-minute shower rather than a 20-minute shower. And I think what we have is the opportunity, through whatever source we choose to use, to do some education and reminding that at least in those instances, they have some control. They can make the choice of having the air conditioning at 75 versus 78 or 6, whatever it is. That's where citizens have control. with the millage rate, they don't. Once we've made it, it's done. So I can support, once we decide where we are with the millage, for these increases, and I'm going to support them, because I believe that's where the citizens have the ability to take some accountability and be a part of helping us be in balance.
Thank you. I think you made some very excellent points. I think you still, though, have the fund balance, which is something, we're talking about growing it from 10 to 20, notwithstanding Irma, but I think, we have to think not one day ahead, but 365. And then the carryovers. Now, of course, this is all mysterious. I don't mean it that way. You don't know what you're going to finish with, right? Now, so I've done eyeball analytics on the second and third quarter financials. Seems like, and this is really spitballing, and it's not even something I can put a bet on, that we're going to come in with some more money at the end of the year. But and then the other part of it is that while we say citizens want these certain things, that citizens want this, citizens want that, and we don't know. Honestly, if it's 7 citizens want that thing, and 7 different citizens want that, and 7 and on and on and on, that, but I think we'd all be reasonable to say that nearly every citizen likes it when their taxes don't go up. So I think that would be something from a data standpoint I can kind of grab onto, and there are other levers that we have. We have fund balances. We have the ability to bond, do loans, do whatever. If by chance that this is the last $240,000 we ever had, that if we step back down to 6.25, I don't think that we're going to hamper the city in such a way. And so I'm really on the same page with you.
What is the percentage of increase with the 6.25? I mean, the 6.5 is a 12.5%.
Yes, 6.5 would be a 12.63% increase over rollback.
Okay, 6.25?
No, I thought you said 6.5.
6.5 is 12.
Yep, sorry. I didn't hear you.
What was the percentage increase? I'm thinking just under 10. Maybe not even that.
Have to do it the old way here.
Mayor, if I could, while he's calculating, and just to know that, in that $240,000 roughly, there's no doubt one of, my favorite project or whatever it might be could be in there. So I mean, all of us know that, but I think that's reasonable that we're looking out that way.
I might add, when I was calculating, I appreciate Mr. Slate's comments about, well, we can bond and things like that, but bonding for small amounts like that.
No. It would be part of some.
Basically impossible because there's more expense associated with that.
Yeah.
It'd be 8.294% increase over rollback.
So that's over rollback, which is the 5.77. Okay, so this is the 5.9. And again, I would just say to the council that whatever millage rate you set tonight, we will balance to that. So we will go back and we will adjust priorities based on our discussions through all those meetings and adjust the dollars in that. And no way, if you say that we're not adjusting personnel, would we adjust personnel? It would be other programs. I mean, that's just what we would do with the millage rate.
Well, and the other reality is, and it goes back to what Vice Mayor Tillett has said also, though, just like with the trees, we're only going to be able to get so much of that done. We put as much in the budget as we think is reasonable, and I think there probably is some room to take some out. The same thing holds true with sidewalks. And you can only get so many sidewalks fixed because Public Works, unless we're going to bring in a company that's only going to do that, which is going to have a cost even higher, there's only so much you can get done. And the reality of it is, you could fix every sidewalk and someone could sue us because they trip over a branch that fell. That's just the nature of society now. It really is.
Well, with all due respect, if I can respond to that, I don't agree with that. I think we have responsibility to protect our taxpayers, our residents, And that responsibility goes to that. If we know we have these issues and don't attend to them, I'm not sure we're doing our homeowners a real favor. I understand your argument.
But I'm saying we're gonna attend to it, but how much is reasonable within 1 year? If we've done 50,000 every year, whether that was the right amount or not, we tried to get it done. Now we've gone to 250,000. I mean, are we really gonna get that done in 1 year
There's
anyway?
only
That's
so
what
many
I'm saying.
people.
Here we use
We're saying
vendors.
we're moving forward.
We use
How
vendors.
much?
We use vendors.
I want to make a comment this time. Mr. McKinney, did you do a 6.3 by chance?
I did, 6.3, it would be 9.16% over rollback.
Okay.
And, you know, obviously I don't know the entire budget yet, but your deputy finance director has pointed out that the sidewalk funds are not being paid from the general funds.
Oh, okay, it's there.
So to make any,
Discretionary funds.
it's-
Yeah.
so to,
Okay, so,
No, and I listen to everybody talking, and I you know, like everybody's comments that's being brought out for this thing, and your comments are nice, and you know, Ms. Hoax, I think the only I guess thing that I disagree with one of the comments you made, that it was a rush process kind of thing, and you know, we started this process.
no, I didn't mean rush process. It was an ongoing process that we kept doing it, but never really got the whole picture until the last meeting of everything.
And I know what you're saying there, but I think that was a prudent way of doing it, because we didn't, you know, we could have stopped then the whole process if we just told her right from the very beginning, you know, from the day one, oh, we're just going to go with a 6.3 or a 6.25, and then we didn't have to do anything else. Just let her put a budget together according to that millage rate, and then our job's done at that point. Okay, really, because we're setting the dollar amount. The dollar amount she has as the city manager. She can adjust the budgets, come to us for a budget, you know, what's it called,
Budget amendments.
Budget amendments, okay, because they have to make the budget work, okay? And that's the prudent way of doing it. So when we talk about going into a 6.25, 6.3, you know, Mrs. Stoll's talking about, I want to see what we're going to be cutting. I don't need to see that at this point. And I agree with what Mr. Slavy's doing. If we're going to cut something, if you're going to bring that rate down to 6.3 or 6.25, whatever this council wants to do, because I'm gathering that there's, you know, with a 6.6, you know, with 6 people here tonight, we're not going to probably get an agreement but we need to move forward with this. We have to make decisions, and the process goes from way back from April, where we sat down with the whole staff, everybody, the public, the staff, everybody was part of this whole process. I think it was a
well, maybe once we hear our public speak, then we'll know a little better where they are.
Good, and I think if we're going to go that way, and you know, it's just that if we're going to set a rate, and let her work out the whatever needs to balance the budget down at that point. So.
And please understand, Ms. Hayes is not surprised at my position. I've said this all along in every meeting I've had with her. She knows how I felt about it. This is no surprise.
I just wish this would have came up at our last meeting when we decided on the 6.5, and then we could have had a lot of good information by tonight. So that's.
I guess I don't see.
Workshop. Yeah, that was a budget workshop.
That was the number brought to us.
That was the number
and
brought to us.
they worked from that. And it's coming tonight for us to
I know
actually
that, but
approve that.
I know that, but the thing is, we had an opportunity to discuss and to go more with that at that point. But saying that, I like to bring the.
Oh, if I could, just one point.
One real quick, and then I'll
Yeah,
the public
sure.
to talk.
I mean, I don't want to commit political suicide, but I feel less.
You're safe.
I'm going to save us one here.
That you know, we've budgeted different times in our lives where it's, you know, you have a back end number, or you come through and you build it up. And certainly, you know, we're all probably guilty, but you know, the might as well mentality of we should do this, we should do this, we should do this. You know, you might as well on that house you're going to build, and then you add up all your might as wells and you get to 6.5, and then you say, oh geez, let me go back a little bit. You know, 6.25 seems, or 6.3 seems better, and we're going to have to do it. So I mean, collectively. I'm okay with that, you know, and just admitting, all right, you know, some of that eye candy that we had there looked really good, but when you reflect on it, asking citizens to go over 10%, 12% increase seems like a lot.
So, let's bring the public up and talk, and Mr. McKinney, just hang around a little bit there so we can.
Would you like him to go through the presentation before the public, or would you like for us to wait for that? That's,
Well, I don't have a presentation, but what I would like to, if you don't mind, go through the statutory requirements of this evening.
it answers a few of the questions that have been asked.
Correct. So, statement number one, the millage rate. You have to set a rate. So whether it's 6.5 or 6.25, I need to know what that amount is this evening, because our second public hearing is September 19th. That means that I have to publish in the newspaper a budget notice, a notice regarding the budget hearing is going to occur on the 19th. I must also put a summary ad in the newspaper detailing the budget. So this evening, if we're going to vote for something less than 6.5 mils, then I'm going to need to go upstairs and recalculate the budget to recompute this sheet that everyone's been provided, because that budget summary must match the tentative millage that you've set. So, and I can do that without a question, but I will need to take a small, break to go upstairs before we go to the next portion, which is the tentative budget resolution. So if there was to be a workshop, etc., then that's fine, but what we advertise in the newspaper would be whatever was decided this evening by the mayor and council.
Go ahead, and since you wrote that, the public has the right to know.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was just confused over the wording on Resolution 2017-127, where it says tentative budget fiscal year, and then in the introduction it said it was a request to approve it, which comma, tentative millage.
And it should have been budget.
And it should have been budget.
Thank you.
That's coming up.
Okay, this is time for the public to come up and ask some questions at this point.
Frank Gonzalez, 8237 Bridgeport Bay Circle in Lakes Mount Dora. The millage rate question that a bunch of us had revolved.
I want to start
I'm sorry.
just one quick.
Yeah.
Sure. During the public hearing session, we have public coming up and comment on these things. It's still a 3-minute process.
Okay. Sure.
Okay, and I'm going to
get
this on here in a second. Okay.
Sure.
Go ahead.
The millage rate that was published on the trim notice, as you all know, said 7. So it's refreshing to hear you're thinking of something less than 7. That's great. But I think for a lot of us, me being one of them who's relatively new to Mount Dora, I don't understand how it almost sounds like 6 sounds good. No, 5 is better. No, 8 is better. No, it almost sounds like it's very arbitrary. I'm sure it's not. But my question is, how is it calculated, the millage rate? Because at the end of the day, what we look at is the bottom number in terms of what the tax is going to be. And as we all well know, it's a combination of a taxable amount, the rates, multiply them out. There's 9 line items on there. The school, the city of Mount Dora, and so on and so on and so on, right? So each component, it's important to know how it's derived, how it's done. And it's interesting to see you discussing it back and forth, and that's great that you're going down instead of up. But it still doesn't answer the question. I mean, how did you do that? How did you come up with that rate?
So the tentative millage rate is set in July of each year, usually typically July 31st. Sorry. The tenant? Okay, that's okay. Mr. Slavy always can hit his, and it's all of us. The tentative millage rate set in July usually of each year, July 31st usually. That is a tentative millage rate. It can be set based on the council's direction, or it can be based on this city manager presentation of a budget. It is a tentative rate. We have maximum millage rates in which we can that we can adopt based on the current millage rate and rollback rate. It's all part of state statute. A lot of cities will go up in a millage rate because once you've set that millage rate, you cannot, typically, I will say you should not exceed it, because then the city is on the record that we have to then post anything that changes from the trim notice. So I will just use the 7 mills that was on there. If we balance the budget as the council did and they asked that it be 7.1 mills, then from that point we would have to send out a notice to the entire population within the citizens of Mount Dora to let them know that it went from 7 to 7.1 because the initial trim is from the property appraiser. So there's statute, and I know that our legal can exactly give you that statute in chapter 166 and so forth. But there's statute that actually regulates what our maximum millage can be at the tentative, and then typically as you go through the budget process, you reduce that millage rate to something that would be what you would need to have to balance the budget.
Well, but the general fund is used, I'm sorry, the balancing of the budget, in my experience, is part of the bigger process, but it doesn't answer the question, how is that rate determined? And, you know, if you have X amount of expenditures that you're gonna have to do during the year or during the period of the budget, you need to have that money, I understand that, to do it, but why not change the value on the property?
At July 31st, all of the budgets had not been discussed and the general fund had not been discussed with this council. They did not know the priorities at that point in time. They selected a millage rate that would allow them to meet the priorities of the community.
Then it sounds premature. If you don't have all the pieces in front of you, how could you decide on anything?
Mr. Gonzalez, please, let her ask her question. We're not going to get into arguments back and forth.
Well, no, it's not an argument. I'm just trying to make a point. That in order to determine the rate and the value and everything else, I've done budgets for many, many years. It's not my first time out looking at a budget. And the point is that you need to have all the facts in front of you so that you can evaluate everything. And I think you guys are doing a great job, but before you decide what the millage rate is or what the value is, you need to know what your expenditures are, what are mandatory, what are niceties, and all the things that you guys are talking about. So, but to treat each item in a vacuum by itself,
if you look at state statute, we have to treat each item to some degree. We have to look at the general fund. Again, at July 31st, this council had not had the opportunity to look at the entire general fund at that point in time. There's a process by which we must go through to present that data. They had not received all that data. We didn't even have all the data in from the state at that point in time. Okay, the state has to give us revenues. We don't know what our revenues are by the time we put the data out there for the July 26th meeting. We have to go with what we have. A lot of the data and a lot of your questions are on the state statute. If you go to the website, you can roll right into the Department of Revenue and you can see those answers. We have to abide by state statute. That's exactly what we use. We follow the guidelines. We don't go with anything beyond that. Just to kind of answer some of those questions.
Mayor?
Okay.
Yes, I don't mean to call for a point of order, but this isn't the time to have a dialogue. But the question is a valid question. And I think the blame, if you need to find somebody to point a finger at, try the state legislature and the property appraiser's office, because we need all the data. We don't have it, and the law requires us. Many cities do their tentative budget at 10 mills, because they can always go down. They cannot go up. So to make a mistake and have to spend thousands of dollars because you were too low, and then sending notice to 15,000 people in Mount Dora makes no sense to me. So that's why it's set high, to try to answer your question, in my humble opinion.
No, that's correct, and thank you for that. And have somebody else?
One thing I think that can help wrap it. Mr. Gonzalez, hi, I'm Lori Tillett, and thank you for writing me. I wanted to tell you that because of the hurricane, the process of getting your questions and the answers to your questions posted on the city's website has been delayed some. So I was hoping that they would be here, would be up today, but that's obviously not going to happen. So I guess as a whole, we would like to beg your indulgence because of
But they will be eventually?
Yes.
Yes, they will be eventually, and I think that Mr. McKinney will be able to answer your questions in detail. But Mr. Rolfson, I'm sorry. Truly, I mean, that was really in a nutshell explanation. We have to aim high so that we can shoot low, because it gives us the flexibility to come in at something lower than that or lower, and we don't have all the information in because of statute. Our numbers have to be in, it was like the 4th of August this year. So anyway, just be patient. Your questions, all 14 of them, will be answered.
In terms, basically, it's a combination of everything that you guys need to do to come up with the rate.
Correct, yes.
I want to have somebody else come up. Anyone else from the public? Mr. Yossi.
Yeah, I know this is always a difficult process on budgets, done a few, but I'm really, really amazed to hear trees all of a sudden, let's do this later. We're having a hurricane come through. If you have been through hurricanes, we're not talking Matthew, we're talking earlier hurricanes where you could not go down streets in Mount Dora because there was a green wall with the laurel oaks that were felled.
What year was that? Real quick. What year
That was Charlie. No, that was 2004. Charlie.
Even back before
Yeah,
then, we had.
yeah, I know, but that was 2 back to back. So you're going to have a lot of trees that are the study, which we finally got to, which will be taken out for us, I'm sure. And to kick that can down the road when so many. Excuse me, ma'am.
I was just saying, we're not
Well,
down the road.
Well, that's the same thing. If you have a commitment to repopulate the urban forest, we need to keep that commitment because people here ran on it. And so I'm just saying, this is my comment. You don't need to argue with me now. I'm just making a comment.
Mr. Yatsik has the right to complete his comments without us debating him, so I appreciate it.
But anyway, that's why I'm just surprised that would come up. Because I think a lot of people, we have a lot of volunteer organizations, Outdoor Friends of the Environment have 20 trees waiting. We have, $30,000 that we've raised privately to get trees. We want the city to follow through with what was people ran on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sir, would you please come up? And just as a point of order, Mr. Rolson goes so kind of let them have their comments, their time for their comments. It's their time to comment. After they get the comments are done, then we will come back to council, then you can have your comments again at that point. So we'll do it that way. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Rolson.
Good evening, Council. Neil Lamb, 403. In public safety, I can understand the need for that. However, it seems like you're adding a lot of employees based on somebody's wants and possibly an empire building, and they may not be necessary. For example, 2 additional persons in the library services. Now, it seems like the library is adequate. I use the library a lot, and I'm not familiar with the internal workings, of course, but it just seems like there's just a little nickel-diming here going on in all the departments, and it seems with the amount of money that's involved in employees, notwithstanding salary, but benefits, Social Security, blah, blah, blah. Having been a previous employer, I understand those. It seems like this is an excessive amount of employees for this particular year. Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am.
Hello. My name is Jackie Lardner. We are at 1200 Gardner Street, Mount Dora. We're the Lardners on Gardner. Some of this, and I'm looking at the tax sheet that we received. Final tax rate and taxes last year. City of Mount Dora has a column 2 millage rate. Then it goes to the next one, current 2017, and it has, if no budget change is made, then it goes to 5.77. And I heard people refer to this as a rollback. I'm not sure I understand what that means.
I'll have the finance director, if the council would like, give a quick definition of that.
Thank you very much.
We can do that right now. We'll do that right now before the next person
Thank
comes
you.
up. Thank you.
The easiest definition of rollback is last year we collected $1 in taxes, okay? So we had a taxable value of $10, okay? So we got $1 in taxes. So this year, our taxable value went up 5%, okay? So we got now an assessed value of $10.50. The rollback rate is simply stated is what would the rate have to be at $10.50 to be to collect that $1. So in our case, it's the 5.77. Okay, so in a nutshell, rollback is nothing more than at what rate would council have to set to bring in the same amount of taxes as the prior year, excluding annexations and new construction.
Because of the increase in property values.
That's correct, sir. Which we were just shy of 5% increase.
Okay, great. Okay, anybody else from the public wish to address our millage rate at this point? Sir, come on.
I'll be way under your 3 minutes. My name's Matt Cameron. I live in the Lakes Mount Dora, Bridgeport Bay Circle. The only comment I want to make is when I got my statement, I saw there was this jump from regular versus proposed, and so I scanned it down to see where the discrepancy, where the jump was, and Lakes Mount Dora was a big jump. It went to 5 point something to 7% and all that. But I'm sitting here listening to you guys tonight, and there's some real strong arguments on that. I think 6.25 is reasonable. I understand things cost more. There's inflation more in every year. I think 6.25 is fair, and I worked in budget items too. You can trim some here and there, and I think that's my spiel. It's under 60 seconds. How about that?
Just as a clarification, since I live in Lakes and Mount Dora also, everybody in the city gets the same tax rate. Okay, we all have different property values, but we all have the same tax rate. I see Mr. Masterson. Mr. Masterson, come on up. Come on up.
Before you start hitting that button there, Mr. Mayor, just hold your finger for a minute. I want to thank Mike Shepard for explaining to me why page 105 of the 476 pages from the August 15th packet had a significant difference between the general fund of $12 million, and it went up to $12 million in 2016, and then it went up to $15 million in 2017. Turns out we changed our allocations of expenses from a bucket over here to fully distributed within the various departments, so that we show the actual cost of a department as opposed to stuff. Yeah. So and I think you told me that there is plans to, much like when a company gets merged, to recast your previous budget line items, so you can see, okay, we bought Bob's House of Cotton Candy in 2012. Here's what would it look like in 2012 if we had Bob's House of Cotton Candy in our revenue stream then, and we didn't, because otherwise it looks like you got really good after you bought Bob's House of Cotton Candy. So that's not the case. And what I am going to talk about, don't touch that button.
I already did. You've been talking for 2 minutes. You got it.
Well, I was trying to be nice to one of our staff, okay? Because he's going to have to feed John McKinney, okay? On his late night. This FTE document that you all distributed at the last meeting was very helpful to me. Because it relates to FTEs. In regarding FTEs, adding FTEs needs to be looked at carefully. Worst day of my life was laying off 17 of the 45 people in my budget. And FTEs start out as numbers on a sheet, and then they become people. They become George, Julio, Mary. And it's harder to lay off a person, it's easier to cut a number, okay? The Mount Dora tourism economy will be impacted by these multiple hurricanes. Our sales tax revenue is going to go down, folks, for a period of time. And it may be more than just between now and the end of this fiscal year. Because Florida is going to take a tourism hit. The petrochemical industry in our country is going to suffer. Our economy is going to suffer. I caution against adding FTEs. If you're going to add FTEs, I suggest not doing full year FTEs. I suggest you put the FTEs in the budget, but defer the number. You don't put them in. Defer the number of additions to mid-year when their costs can be absorbed on the departments hitting the transaction targets or cash flow during the mid-year adjustment process. You can think about them, but don't add them until you've got the money to pay for them, until you're sure your cash flow is justifying it. There are a number of new FTEs in this budget. I agree with the gentleman. Too many, I agree with the number. I suggest you take a look at shared FTEs. When I was cutting staff, I gave workers 1 point if they ran one machine. I gave them 2 points, they ran 2 machines. They ran 4 machines, they were a 5-pointer. And I kept the 5-point people. Let's encourage hiring multifunctional employees. My managers were expected to reallocate, make their people available elsewhere, and I kept track of that. Let's make sure that managers share people as opposed to this is my employee. My last comment is the transportation department suffered a headcount reduction from 12 in 2011 down to 8.5 and then down to 8. I believe we basically have the same number of streets in 07 and in 14. Help me understand why the transportation department headcount was reduced and hasn't been increased, and yet we're planning on adding headcount elsewhere. And if we're going to defer any headcount, my suggestion is add two policemen this year and defer 2 to next year. They are expensive additions to our budget because not only it is them, but you got a car, you got equipment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and that is an opportunity. The numbers that I offered up, I had a lot. We're a $63 million budget. I'm almost done. We're a $63 million operating budget for the city. $18 million dollars is the general fund, and that's what we debate. The rest of the stuff pays for itself. And I worked for several hours. I ended up with what, $400,000, $500,000 worth of reductions. I was really discouraged when I got through with what I'd achieved, but we gotta get our pencils out. Thank you. Excuse me. Everybody wants to know about my favorite stick. Okay. It's called a flip stick. If you have any members of your family that have balance issues, Amazon, $64, $65. It folds up, it collapses. It is a really useful tool.
Is the city making any money off this advertisement?
This seating has been sponsored and paid for by.
Sales tax revenue comes in here, then we'll get a fraction of 63.
My name is Jim Murray, with 1224 Normandy Drive. Having sat in through the budget hearings, I do realize that there are some places that we can cut things, some places we can postpone. We don't want to postpone a lot of things, but we do need to postpone some of them, and we do need to cut some of them. You are right, it's going to affect a lot of the seniors and a lot of the fixed budget people. One of the things that I suggest is we put a moratorium on some of the larger spendings. That's an obvious one. We can postpone it, especially since we've got a hurricane coming up behind us. We need to make sure that we have enough money to do that. The last thing I want to say is to go to each department head, if you would, and ask them to find 1 or 2 items that they can cut. Mike Masterson said the same thing. There are ways of cutting them. Let the individuals that are in charge of those departments look at it, figure out what they can cut, and come back to you with it. Police and fire are one of the ones that I don't think need to be cut right now, mainly because they're still recuperating from their previous years where they've lost them. They need to come up to where they were before we start cutting in that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else wish to address the council on this item, on the millage rate? Okay, seeing none, let's go back to council. And Ms. Hayes, did you want to address any of the items that were at this point? before the council goes back?
Well, let's see. I mean, I can address some of the FTE. We've discussed it a lot over the last several weeks. We have 7 full-time public safety positions. In those numbers, we have 2 part-time communications dispatchers in those numbers. The library are 2 part-time people. They're not 2 full-time FTEs, and those are actually reflect the pilot program of open longer on Saturday as well as opening on Sunday. So there is a return on investment on those. There's a revenue that comes in that supports that on circulation. There's a code enforcement in, as the gentleman spoke earlier, there was on the council in reference to our growth out at the Innovation District. So there's code zoning, excuse me, I said code enforcement, I apologize, a zoning position that's in there so that we can process applications, annexations, and that type of information. And I'm probably going to miss a couple of these positions because I'm trying to go from memory. But there's a position in the city manager's office that was discussed, part-time position. All of our positions, and even those that I mentioned, okay, that's fine. Even those that I missed, those positions are based on a lesser time period. When we budget positions, there's no way I can go through the council and the council can pass a budget that's effective October 1, in which I can hire somebody to be on board October 1. It's not logical. So when you look at our public safety, they are not actually reporting before January 1 and March 1st. The zoning, it's in January if I'm not mistaken. The library are 2 part-time positions because I can recruit for those within about 15 to 30 days. That's a little easier position. The city manager's office is not till January as we begin next year's budget when I need a little bit more help. The parks and position for the part-time downtown, it's for now. We need the help in the downtown to continue keeping it looking as well as we spent this last year bringing it up to. So we typically, for all positions, they have been spread. Nothing is full-time beginning October 1. It's spread throughout the year on purpose. Most of the other programs, we can always go back. We'll prioritize and look at the optional programs that have been put in the budget, and we can adjust some of those. We have recently applied for a grant with the federal government for the urban forestry for $25,000. So we're able to supplement $25,000 of what was general money to become part of that grant money. We kept $150 in the budget. It became really $175 because of that. So we can cut that $25. I have no issue with that because we're still keeping the $150 we originally planned. Assuming we receive the grant. The challenge we have is if we don't receive the grant. Those are things we can prioritize as a staff and work within whatever millage rate you ask that we work within. I think the positions are critical to bring us back to the levels that we need to operate. Not asking for any additional positions in the public safety that are in the office. They're all boots on the ground. So we are only looking at positions that we feel from an operational base, and I think you'll see that in the next several days as we operate for the storms that we need to maintain. And some of the projects are projects that we have all discussed are things that we need to do as a city. Again, can those be trimmed back? We can always do whatever's the desire of the council and the desire of the community, but we just keep that in mind as we go through the process if it's a general fund. You know, as we go forth and establish standards, we establish benchmarks, that will require us to do some different funding, but we can bring that to you at mid-year if we're short anything. So again, I can work with what the council gives me.
Mr. Olson?
Thank you, Mayor. Wanted your council to know that when I was mentioning the examples of water rates and sidewalks, it was intended as an example. One of my favorite issues are sidewalks, obviously. Favorite meaning urgent. And so I just use that as an example, knowing it's not a part of the general fund, but thank you, Mike, for that. We have, with regard to staff, for example, I will never support any reduction in our public safety. I think I get a sense the entire council agrees with that. Many of you know that past 8 or 10 years, the police department, when they were slashed more than 10 years ago, whatever it was, has never caught up yet. What will it take? A crisis? Oh, you know, we now have a crisis, so now we need to bite the bullet. Again, that was my whole intent, to try to express the concern I have for, as in the water rate study. We sat on our posteriors as a council for 10 years and didn't do a rate study.
I'm not sure it was 10 years, but I don't want to get an argument. It really wasn't 10 years, but people picked that number and threw it out there.
Somebody shared that, I remember. 7 years, okay.
But it wasn't 10.
Well, let's see.
It was longer because, and again, I'm not the same one. I'm stuck, because I've got some.
Let Mr. Wilson finish, and then you can.
You're right, I apologize.
That's okay.
That's all right.
I have difficulty with inaccurate information.
Me too, and I remember hearing 10, but if it's 7, I'm fine with that. And if it's 5, it's still too short a period of time to adjust rates for the sake of those taxpayers that have to pay those rates. And so that's that's strictly an example I'm trying to raise for it's better to keep up with the urgent needs of this city and the important needs of this city rather than politically say, well, we want to try to roll this back for a little bit and then have to catch up later on and spend more money. So that's just a generality. And we've had, how many workshops and budget issues have we had? More than I ever remember. 6 over 4, 5, 3, 4 months at least. So it's not that this has been silent. We have made more effort than I can recall, and I think I'm at least one of the senior members on this council. We have made more effort to discuss and chew and debate this issue than I can recall, and we certainly have done, in my humble opinion, justice to the public to let them know we've not sat on our hands and surprised anybody. Everything was done in the public. They were all noticed. Sometimes the public in a workshop couldn't debate it, and in regular meetings they can, like now. And I totally understand and respect everybody that is concerned about raising taxes. As Mr. Tucker said, I don't like them either. But I think it's far worse to have an emergency, fund an emergency issue that may come up, as in our police department, for example, that still is not fully staffed compared to approximately 10 years ago, whatever that number is. And so it's time to catch up, and then we have these other, the vote that's going to come up next year that's going to affect us. But that being said, I still intend to support it, and I want to compliment our city manager and our director, finance director, and Mike, our assistant finance director and former finance director, for all the work they have done for me. It has been a marvelous experience for me to learn. And nobody has been, other than the policy that stops at this council table, this dais right here, nobody has been shortchanged with information. And I'm really valuing that. I will accept whatever this council does, but I intend to support the resolution. Thank you.
I apologize, I think this was covered at our last meeting, but I wasn't allowed to drive a vehicle last week, so on Thursday night, so I was not at 100%. But at the end of the meeting, didn't Mr. McKinney get up and speak? Someone asked him what that would cost the average household at 6.5, and I think he said $12 a month.
That's for everything.
For everything, yes, that included water, wastewater.
And that was at $150,000.
For $150,000 house.
Would you like to step up, Mr. McKinney? We have the house in the package again.
So, per page 4 of last week's budget workshop presentation, we talked about what the $150,000 property taxable assessed value taxes would be for all agencies of Lake County. So in 2016, that house paid $2,186.80. With all the proposed agency's tax rates that were on the trim notice, knowing that the city of Mount Dora reduced theirs from 7 to 6.5 mils, that house would pay $2,201.49. That's a difference of $14.69 for the year in taxes. That is taking into account the $50,000 homestead exemption for school board taxes and $25,000 on all other agencies. So there again, that $150,000 home value is reduced in one aspect to $100,000 taxable and $125,000 taxable for all others. So there are approximately 20 different exemptions out there. So it's hard to do scenarios other than the average.
And that information is on the trim. So as the gentleman spoke earlier, every applicable agency that you qualify within your home is on that trim bill. So it can change according to each one. And again, it changes for a lot of things.
Okay, but that is just for residential homestead.
That's correct. But on the same token, a commercial property could have had a devaluation or an increase. So it's hard to say, for properties within Mount Dora, was there a look back? Was there portability? I mean, there's so many scenarios when it comes to taxes from last year.
But an investment property can go up as high for a
10%.
resident who's looking to move here in the future, but living somewhere else and chooses to invest in our town. Theirs can go as high as 10%.
Did they move from another municipality within?
I'm doing generality of as people, and in talking with realtors and things, as people look to invest in our town for the future because they know they want to retire here.
Right.
That while they're living someone else, whether they've got portability or what, for the period of time they're paying our taxes, they can go as high as 10%. Is that accurate? Can go as high. I didn't say 10, but it can go because that's what's allowed.
Homestead is capped at 3% annually. All other non-residential and residential properties are at 10%.
Yeah.
If I could go one step farther, Mr. McKinney, and this is just ballpark. If it was lowered to 6.3 or 6.275, would that means for an average $150,000 house, instead of being $12 a month with everything, it might be $9 a month?
Without going back upstairs and calculating it, I would hate to say that on public record what it would be, sir.
Okay.
It would be a little lower.
Again, if you're going from 12% to 9%, 8%, it's going to go down.
It's going to go down a
It's a
percentage.
$14 for the whole year, so could it drop to even?
Yeah.
We would just have to.
We're not talking in the big picture a lot of money, but in the little picture, not so much.
Odds are $6-7.
Yeah.
I would just read in, we had some other questions, if I might, for one quick moment, I think to answer some of the questions that were addressed by Mr. Tucker and Ms. Host during some of the meetings. We have posted, or we will post, we haven't posted yet, I apologize, a few of the questions on millage rate we presented to you tonight. Just so that the community is aware, Mount Dora millage rate, whatever we adopt tonight is what it is. Tavares, they're 7.3397. Eustis is 7.5810. They do not have a heavy commercial base, although they're heavier than we are. And you have Leesburg at 4.2678. Look at your difference in land, the amount of mileage that we have. We're at 16 square miles, give or take, here in Mount Dora. And I believe if you look at Leesburg, they're at, we don't have mileage, but they're at 22,000 residents roughly. We're at 13.9. Tavares is at 15.9, so at 16, and Eustis is at 19.199 on the citizens, based on the last census. So when you're looking at the big picture, we're fortunate to have the millage rate based on the councils in the past where we're at. So I just mentioned that one because it was asked of us to present that data to you tonight, and we'll post that on the website. There's other data there that's information too about, I have to toot the horn for the council. We currently have our fund balance at 10%. You're proposing to go 20%. Tavares is 5.7, so they have a $900,000 fund balance. That's it. So Eustis on the other side has, they've been fiscally smart, they are 25%, Leesburg is at 20%. So there's a lot of factors involved in the budget process.
Okay, so, may I? In totality, last year our total budget was? You weren't here.
And I didn't bring that up here with me.
I think it was 48 mil.
48 mil?
It was,
Our total city budget.
it was just below 50 million, yes.
And
I
this
don't
year
exactly.
it's going to be 64.
63.5, sorry, 63.5.
Okay.
But remember also, going to the $64 million budget, that's also taking into account, remember, the internal service funds that we created?
Yes.
That they're being calculated or shown twice. So we truly did not increase the budget $14 million.
No.
How much did you truly increase it?
I don't remember how much last year's budget was, so I apologize. I can go find all that information between
That's
now
fine.
and the budget resolution.
My point is, it's a healthy budget in totality
Yes, ma'am.
from what it was last year, even though we changed processes as to how we did it.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
understand that. It still is significant. Okay.
Yes, and to your point, Tavares was 30 million last year, Eustis 34 million, overall budget, excuse me, Leesburg 157 million.
Mayor? Thank you. So my comments would be, first, in defense of Ms. Hoax, I took your example of the trees as only an example. And so I just want to let you know that. And you know, but it was great that Mr. Yassick, you know, came up and clobbered me on that, because that's fine. But anyway, or others, I mean the council. So that's fine, but I just want to know that we're just talking generalities. Now, having said
And the
that,
reality is, though, we're not saying we're not going to do it. It becomes, is it going to be this big or is it going to be this big?
Correct.
We've committed to it. Excuse me, the same thing with parking. We stuck $1 million there. Is it going to be this big, or are we in the course of the year going to be able to do this much, because it's what we physically can do based on all the things we've got on our plate, and what hopefully we're going to have with, I know Mr. Leedy's in the audience, and what's going to happen with economic development and stuff. So I'm just looking at, you know, what can we really accomplish with it all, and can we make sure that our budget has that?
right. Well,
That's
and
where I'm
then, so
coming
that's
from.
just one point. And then the other part, Mayor, if I could, is that, you know, our fund balance is 4.6 million, or, excuse me, 4.2 million, 4.3. And we're proposing to move it toward 20, which means that, you know, roughly, we've got $430,000 of fund balance growth. And what we're saying is, essentially, if we do no other, if it comes from no other source, this $240,000 would decrease the amount of increase in our fund balance in 1 year. But that really isn't the whole story, because we have carryover that we probably will have that will also help fund it. And then also we have the ability, as many citizens have said and others, to go back and look at things. So from an overall perspective, I feel comfortable with it. That also it's a message to citizens and then others that you know, we just want to squeeze ourselves a little bit to just stay at an increase in taxes of under double digit. And for me, that feels good, and it follows some level of logic.
Okay, we're at a point now. And I'm just gathering that we had, our motion is for 6.5, okay, and millage rate. And so that's what's on the floor right now. If that would be, and my inkling is that being 3-3 here, I don't want to risk, because we have to pass something. And if it goes, if we don't vote on it, if it goes down, we still have to come up with some kind of a number. We still have to do something. So instead of maybe going through things twice, if there's a number that people want to put out there as an amendment to that number, then let's do it now at this point and vote on an amendment. And then if that passes, then we can turn around and then put it, go that way. And work it that way as an amendment instead of the actual motion.
Sure, you can do that in two ways, in my understanding. You can vote on this. If it fails, you can have another motion to vote on whatever it is, or number two, you can amend the motion.
You can do amend it, either one. We go either way the council wanted, if you want to go straight up vote, or if you want to go to an amendment first.
Who made the motion?
I did.
You supported it, so.
I did.
So you're not willing to
Well, they make a motion
No,
to
but
amendment.
anybody can move to amend it.
Yes.
Oh,
Doesn't have to be the moving party.
I thought it
Then
did.
just get a second and make a vote on it.
Sure.
And if the amendment passes, then the number will change. If it doesn't pass, then it stays the same, then we vote on the other one. And you still risk of going the other way also, so.
I move that we amend this original motion to make the millage rate 6.25.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second for 6.25. And any other comments or questions on that?
This would be a motion to amend, and if it passes, then we have to vote on the main
The
motion.
main
Yes, sir.
motion,
We
6.25.
understand.
6.25, excuse me.
Have a question? If the amendment passes and all, now next 2 weeks now, can it go back to 6.5? It cannot. Okay.
You could, but you don't want to do that.
Okay, that's fine.
You don't want to do that.
That's what I want to find out.
The notice
We
is
would
going to
be
be
asking the
posted.
city manager to find the difference.
Yes, and the notice would be posted in the newspaper at the 6.25 and,
Be expensive.
having the difference in that.
No, that's
would
fine. That's why I just
balance.
wanted a clarification.
Could do it, but.
And I would piggybacking,
Okay.
and this is the city manager. Can you find items to take out?
Again, Mr. Tucker, excuse me, Councilmember Tucker, if I had selected at 6.25, I will balance the budget to 6.25.
Okay.
I have no doubt if it passes, Mr. Mayor, that our manager will find it. The only question we have to deal with is that a wise choice? That's all.
Okay, and do we have to bring this out to the public on the amendment?
I would recommend it. I would recommend it.
Would you mind reading the amended motion in the correct form so that we have it for the state when we follow the final report?
I move to amend the motion to approve resolution 2017-R-126, tentative Mount Dora operating millage at 6.5 to 6.25.
And would you state the rollback rate so that it's known, the percentage and so forth? Okay, rollback rate of 5.7713. I know, I just want to make sure it's known.
So is that motion, is that?
Yes.
That should be acceptable.
And my
Okay
second
with
still
that.
stands if needed.
Vanessa, the public has a right to comment on this item also, and if anybody from the public wishes to comment. Comment? Just on the amendment only, just on the amendment only.
Yes, I understand that. It sounds great to amend it down to
State name and
6.25.
address, please, state name and address.
I'm sorry, my name is Frank Gonzalez, address is 8237 Bridgeport Bay Circle, Lakes of Mount Dora. Great, 6.25 sounds better than 7. However, I think it's a number. I don't know how you got that number.
And number was never 7, just like earlier, no, it was never 7%. Okay.
6.5.
It's still not, it was never 7% from us. Anyway, anybody else from the public wish to address? All right, back to council. We have a roll call vote on the amendment.
Yes, sir. Ms. Tillett?
Yes.
Mr. Slavy?
Yes.
Mr. Tucker?
No.
Mr. Rolfson?
No.
Ms. Hoax?
Yes.
Mayor Jerome?
No. Okay,
The amendment.
the amendment fails. The amendment fails. Okay,
Mayor?
there's still choices. Okay, go ahead.
I move to amend the motion to approve resolution 2017.R.126, tentative Mount Dora operating millage at 6.5 to be 6.3.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and again, comments from council?
No comment.
No comment.
Anybody from the public wish to address on 6.3 amendment? Mr. Masterson. We have a microphone for Mr. Masterson? We do have a microphone, Mr. Masterson, and feel free to ask for it anytime. If you want to come up, that's fine, but you're also welcome to ask for the microphone if you wish, and you can stay in your seat.
Mike Masterson, 7887 Crosswinds Way. I cut my own grass, so thank you very much for offering me a microphone. If I can cut my own grass, I can walk up here. In regards to the millage rate, for those that are having concerns about pulling the trigger on a 6.25, if we have a great year in terms of growth within Mount Dora, we have a great year in sharing of state sales taxes, etc. If we have a great year in terms of selling houses in various communities that are contributing significantly to the revenue stream in this city, the revenue will be there to pay for the things we would like to do that we choose to defer at the present time, or should be there, could be there. But you have a buffer to be able to do that. Some of the things that you want to do that you want to start in January, you may not be able to do in January, but you can still keep them on the draft list. And then as the revenue comes in, and again, back to your mid-year budget adjustment, as the revenue comes in and you do your mid-year, say, hallelujah. What did we put on the draft list that was our first thing that we kicked out, that we said, the last thing we kicked out, we said we need this to make our number. Now approach it from that standpoint, that everything that you have to cut and chop doesn't end up thrown in the trash can. You put it in the drawer. Okay? And then when you're ready, when you come out, hallelujah, then you can reach in the drawer and pull out the first, second, and third things that you deferred. So you haven't said no, you just said maybe. Okay? Thank you.
Anybody else from the public wish to comment? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Saby, for that added amendment, and so we can continue the discussion on this. And it's a nice little compromise, not too bad on that. Anybody else from the council wish to address? Seeing none, Ms. Johnson, can we have the roll call vote on the amendment to 6.3?
Yes. Mr. Slavy?
Yes.
Ms. Tillett?
Yes.
Ms. Hoax?
Yes.
Mr. Rolfson?
Yes.
Mr. Tucker?
Yes.
Mayor Jerome?
Yes. Let's go with that one. That was a simple process.
Define simple.
Okay, at this point here, we got the next resolution for the budget.
Hold on, that was a motion to approve.
Oh, I'm sorry, we have to go back to the original motion now. The whole motion.
And we'll get the percentage to read in.
Would you read the amended motion, please? Thank you. Okay. Oh, it's already been, okay, it's already been amended, so she can read the amended motion.
Okay.
The motion's already on the floor, so it's good.
Councilmember, you want the original motion before the amendment?
No, the amended motion now. All you're gonna do is change the 6.5 to 6.3.
Right, okay. Councilmember Slavy moved to approve resolution 2007-R-126 with a tentative Mount Dora
No, the original, the very, okay. I don't have Mr. Rolson read the original motion. Okay, so you probably don't have that on there right now. That's right. Mr. Rolson, would you read the original motion amended?
I will. I'll make the motion to state what the amendment reflected. And that's, I move to approve resolution 2017-R-126 tentative Mount Dora operating millage at 6.30.
That is the original motion is amended to 6.3 for your record. And we need a second on that. Or no, we already had the second on that, so it's now we're voting on that original motion. And so is amended.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so we don't have to go back to the public on that, so we have a roll call vote on the amended motion, please.
Sure. Mr. Slavy,
Yes.
Ms. Tillett,
Yes.
Ms. Hoax, Mr. Ralston,
Yes.
Mr. Tucker,
Yes.
Mayor Jerome.
Yes. Okay, now our next thing is the budget thing. And at this point, okay, no, before you start that, I would like to have a recess.
Perfect, because that's what I was gonna ask for, because I have to go re-roll the budget.
Right, and then we
Thank
have
you.
to do other things.